Do y'all smell that in the air? Got me feeling like Dwayne Johnson. Bro. Do y'all smell what's in the air? It's the holiday season. Trap remix. Like, bro, you know what it is, son. I'm not talking about holiday cookies. I'm not even talking about Santa himself. Final Saga Oda. This week, cooking in the kitchen. He's got his new grill. And what did he put on the grill this week, y'all? My boy said it's rematch season. My boy said, yo, it's time for Robert D. Lucci. And the greatest of all time, go with the coat from the future, from the past. Nika. Joy Boy. He's got multiple names. We know him as the king. We know him as Big Goat Monkey D. Are gonna be squaring off 1v1 for old time's sake. Now, I don't care if Luffy sends Jinbei to get the job done. I don't care if he himself gets the job done. I don't care if they don't even attack each other. The fact remains, next chapter, or whenever we get back to this scenario at hand, we're going to have Robert D and Monkey D in some sort of confrontation. And I'm so excited for it. And I know that Oda has continued to give us these flashback sequence, not even necessarily flashback sequences, even though we have gotten the flashback sequences to like Vegapunk and stuff, but these nostalgic hits, these nostalgic beats. Like, he's out here playing that one Donkey Kong game. Remember on the GameCube? I forgot what it was called. Jungle Beats? Is that what it was called? It was you know, the drums of liberation. Doon, 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 doon. You know, that game was nice. That game was fire. I never owned it, but I know my cousin had it, and they brought like the little Congos. Like, it was the good old Donkey Kong game. That rhythm game, that's what Oda's playing right now within this arc. Considering that he's just playing with all these different emotions. He's like, yo, reveals, the hype, Monkey D. Dragon, Vegapunk, now Lucci. And he's like, yo, and he's lobby. And he's lobby. I mean, bro, he's been in the volume 41 and volume 44 bag for the past 3 chapters. We have had multiple different flashbacks, or at least like us, the fans, looking back on Water Serenity Lobby. We already look back on those arcs very fondly. My boy AJ, shout out to Alexander, over on Twitch doing his thing, just recently finished going through the Enies Lobby arc. The entire Water 7 saga over on Twitch. Definitely go check him out. He's doing some amazing stuff over there. But right after he finished that, like, yo, Oda's out. Is Oda watching Alexander streams? Is that what it is? He came out here and gave us the Robin Clover stuff, which was extremely emotional. Had all of and Saul, and it's like, yo, it's 1066. Now we come over to 1068. And we got Kaku vibing like it's Water 7. Stussy wasn't around back then, but you know, Stussy's vibing. But we have Hattori in a chapter. Hattori and Lucci in a chapter with more than several lines. It's like you just love to see it. We saw the Rokugan. Rokugan. Ooh. In 4K, destroying Atlas. Now, what's interesting about this is the first time that Luffy saw Atlas, Luffy attempted to just simply punch Atlas, and Atlas was like, yo, what you doing? So we know that a simple punch is not going to do anything. It took Lucci using the Rokugan, which obviously there's going to be the conversation of whether Rokugan is still his strongest attack. I think all of us don't believe that to be the case. If Luffy, at the time, his strongest attack was Jet Gatling, and even after the time skip, you know, with Red Hawk and the Elephant Gun, it's like, now, Flagnards, it's like Gear 5th something, right? But regardless, if Luffy, and I know Luffy's a fighting genius, right, in regards to getting from that stage to here, but Lucci, is, of course, an individual who I'm going to assume has gone through tremendous training, especially after taking an L. And so I don't expect Rokugan to be his strongest attack, but I will say this. If Rokugan to Lucci is what a jet pistol is to Luffy, like one of his base attacks that he'll use to like test an enemy, then by the Flagnars, Rokugan is a strong... We know how strong Rokugan can be. It almost wiped out the king back in Enies Lobby. So utilizing his new abilities and everything that he's learned while exercising Rokugan is very, very exciting. It just goes to show that Atlas was no pushover, and Lucci recognized that. Like, yo, I'm not going to be able to simply just use a finger pistol or a measly punch. It's like, yo, I got to hit it with something powerful. And so came in there with a regular Rokugan. So I'm curious if the Rokugan itself has gotten strong. I know it's gotten stronger, but like, where in like Lucci's arsenal is it, right? Like, is it still in the upper echelon of things that he uses? And if we do see Lucci use some combat abilities here in the next couple of chapters, will we see like the return of the Supreme King Rokugan and stuff of that nature? Like, he just has such a cool moveset, and I wonder how much more of that we're gonna see if they actually do end up boxing. Now, of course, there's the whole Luffy versus Lucci. Like, Lucci stands no chance, which I am most certainly... That's an emperor now, bro. That's Monkey D. Especially coming off of beating Kaido. My boy's gonna have a strong showing here, man. And so, I don't... Personally, I want to see Gear 5th because it's my favorite transformation. I just want to see more Gear 5. But if he doesn't use it, just to keep it in the tank, Oda's like, no, we're keeping Gear 5th in the tank. He doesn't need it. He just uses Conquers, Conquers, coded attacks, and he's out there boxing. He's like, oh, Lucci. Oh. Like, he's just boxing. He's like, yo, come here. He doesn't even have to guard. He's like, oh, come. Oh, he's like, you don't know I got future sight now, baby? Future sight, monkey. He's like, come on. Yo, where you hitting? Where you hitting? And so, but on a serious note, even if he doesn't do the pacifist too slow thing to Lucci, or if they genuinely start throwing hands, whether Lucci goes down, easily or whatever, I don't care. The main thing I'm interested about when it comes to this entire thing is how Oda's going to handle their confrontation. What are they going to talk about? Are we going to continue to see Lucci's internal conflict in the way that we have the last couple of chapters in regards to him finally questioning his superiors? I think that's a very interesting thing. That a little interesting subplot that Oda has been going through since Dressrosa up until this point, especially when we got to the Reverie and he was able to see exactly what's going on with the Celestial Dragons with his very own eyes. Then he goes over and witnesses what happens with Lucia, and now he's like, yo, what's happening here? And now he has to take care of Vegapunk. He's bringing the S-Bear in Kuma Seraphim, and it's like, yo, he's starting to question more and more. And so I want to know where Oda's taking that. Like I said in the reaction, which, by the way, if you have not watched the reaction stream, I'm currently dealing with a copyright strike situation, so I know when a channel has a copyright strike, YouTube basically just like lets them die, or we don't get on the algorithm. We don't hit sub boxes. It's just every single video is not going to do as like it normally does, right? It's always going to perform extremely poorly. That's just the way the YouTube works when it comes to the copyright system. So if you have not seen the reaction, or you think I didn't do a reaction, that's probably why. Because YouTube is just, they always do that when it comes to copyright stuff. But if you did not see it, we talked in that video in the after stream discussion that about Lucci's internal conflict and how I really want him to continue to like maintain his dark justice attitude. I want to see another perspective on that, but I do want him to maintain that, because we know that Lucci is somebody who with a lot of conviction, right? And even if he starts questioning, I don't think he'll immediately turn over to the other side. I wouldn't want him to turn over to the other side. I would want him to stay a Marine, and especially if Lucci is going to be a Marine that is going to potentially have a lot of character growth down the line, right? Or if it's just going to be in this arc. Whatever he ends up doing, that's what I'm fascinated about. Like, I think there's some good like potential alley-oops being thrown here for some fantastic slam dunks in regards to Lucci's character. Like, it looks like a very compelling internal conflict that could lead into the heart of Agate Island, considering Lucci. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see where Oda's going to take that. And of course, before we get into any of that, we got to see what happens here with Luffy and Lucci. I'm super pumped. I hope they box. I really do. Like, just to see, at least if they just throw hands for a little bit, man. Like, come on, dude. He can't just set this up and not have him at least throw one punch. You know what I mean? We got to see it. But I'm most certainly fascinated in seeing how Oda handles that. Before we talk about 1067, because I do want to talk about 1067, and specifically in 1067, the legendary Iron Giant stuff. For 1068, I want to talk about the Sentomaru coming in with the seraphims, which I think is going to be very, very important. But also Vegapunk's dream, and in particular, what that means for the rest of the series moving forward in regards to Vegapunk potentially coming with us on the ship. Because the thing with crew members at this stage in the game, you know, we have our Vivis and like our Yamatos that'll be there later on at the very end of the series, right? Or maybe Vivi might come a little before, but you know, these characters that are for sure like crew members coming down the line, Luffy's already invited and recognizes as members of the crew, right? So like we know those characters will be coming in some way, shape, or form as members of the Straw Hats. The thing is, right? Vegapunk, if Oda, with the way that like a JRPG party being structured, I know he's heavily inspired by Final Fantasy VI, which has 14 playable party members. If he wants Vegapunk to be the crazy old scientist member of the group, to me, the thing that I wouldn't like that stops me from saying, "Oh, Vegapunk's joining the crew," is Frankie, because Frankie's role within the series itself, it's like Vegapunk kind of serves as like both Frankie and Robin in one, right? Like a character that has all this voice entry information, the origin of fruits, all of this stuff, but at the same time has the capabilities of creating what Frankie's creating. Which is why I'm like, what is Oda doing with this Vegapunk situation and him declaring that he wants to get off the island? At this point, I think it's safe to assume he is going to get off the island and might be coming with us to Elbaf. But where is that going to take Vegapunk, the Straw Hats, and everything else? Is Vegapunk going to be the new Kinemon? Or Vegapunk comes with us to Lodestar, to potentially Laptail, as not necessarily a Straw Hat, but somebody who is on the ship specifically to see their dream. Now that we see Vegapunk's dream, it's like, yo, it's out there. You know what I mean? Like that is most certainly, especially now in its connection to the potential, the source of power they somewhere from the Void Sentry, this potential like undying flame or the All Spark, you know, that we've been calling it in the streams. Whatever that thing is, Vegapunk finding that is going to be extremely key for the end game of the series, especially since it could potentially bring free energy to everyone. We talked about it in the stream on how it perfectly connects with Sanji's dream in regards to Sanji, you know, with the all blue, potentially connecting all of the seas into one sea. It would make it much easier for Vegapunk to be able to distribute all this free energy to everyone around the world. So they would kind of go hand in hand. But I'm just curious on how Vegapunk's dream would go about, and would he be on the ship at that point in time? That's the most interesting part about those lines of dialogue, especially after all of us had the rug pulled under us with Yamato, or at least I did. Now, there was people out there that didn't believe Yamato was going to join. I thought Yamato was going to join. And the dream was there, the declaration was there, but now that Vegapunk is saying this too, it's like, okay, what happens now? Luffy obviously is like, yo, come on, man, you're weird, you're funny, so go ahead and come on the ship. But what's going to be interesting about that is, if Vegapunk ends up joining, what is that going to mean for the series moving forward? Because obviously, that ship is then going to contain Nico Robin, which is a massive threat to the WG. Luffy, who is Nika, and Nika is the biggest threat to the WG. And then also now we're going to have Vegapunk, if Vegapunk is on the ship. And like I said, I don't care whether Vegapunk's a Straw Hat or an honorary crew member like a Kinemon or something like that, right? We're talking somebody who's on our ship. That is going to have direct consequences of stuff happening the stuff that's going to happen down the line. On that same line of thought, Vegapunk declaring this dream and wanting to leave as soon as possible lets me know that Egghead Island has around, like we talked about yesterday, 10 to 15 chapters left. So if that is the case, what is going to happen at the end of this arc? Considering how long it takes Kuma to get here right after he pops. Is Dragon going to follow Kuma here? Does Kuma appear by himself? Where does Kuma appear? We talked about this in the stream. But for those who did not watch the stream, there are multiple different things, right? Kuma obviously appearing here on Egghead Island, potentially missing them, because if they are about to leave very, very soon, with CP0 showing up, Vegapunk wants to get here as soon as possible, they're probably going to leave within the next couple of hours, right? They're going to be right out of Egghead Island. So if that's the case, Kuma's going to arrive here 3 days later. 2.5 days later, technically. right? Or if it's nighttime, like 2 days later. So Kuma arrives. Let's just say, hypothetical situation, Dragon arrives too. What is that going to lead towards? And this was my thing with 1067's ending, is I always believe Dragon is not going to make it there on time. Just like I believe Kuma is not going to make it there on time. But what is it about them not making it there on time that is going to be consequential to the rest of the story? Because them not making it on time has to be something, right? Something has to be either be left behind on Egghead, or the aftermath of Egghead, or whatever it is that is going to leave Kuma and Dragon in a state of wanting to propel and or progress into the next stage of the story. Obviously, we know how big the Revolutionary Army is going to be in the end game of One Piece. But if we come to a scenario where Dragon arrives too late, that a scenario comes about where he finally gets to Egghead, Kuma's there, there's no Vegapunk, no Straw Hats, none of them, but Egghead Island has been left in shatters. It is in shambles, it's been destroyed. Then if that were to be the case, would that be one of those things that sets Dragon over? Because Sabo's already been wiped out, right? And he's already been told about the empty throne and stuff of this nature that's already pushing him towards the edge. As Ivankov said, this is only the beginning here for what the Revs are about to do. Does the situation here, whatever happens here in the rest of Egghead Island, will this be another thing that propels the Revolutionary Army to continue this war against the Lost Dragons? I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. I just want to know what it is. What does Dragon see? You know, Vegapunk, at the very least, a Shaka unit, and the Shaka unit representing Vegapunk, right? As one of his brains, or as you know, the brain that has been distributed, and they all represent like different portions of Vegapunk. But Shaka believes that he doesn't have much time left, so Vegapunk could potentially die as well here at the end of this arc, which would most certainly propel Dragon to move 110%, right? But it's like, where does this leave Kuma? So I'm curious on a few different, in a lot of ways actually, of where this goes. Does this mean that Bonnie gets left behind with Kuma? But then that doesn't make sense because Kuma's not going to make it there on time. So it's like, and I'm sure they're about to leave very, very soon. So I'm so curious. Do the other Vegapunk stay behind? I don't know. I don't know. So a lot of interesting scenarios. Do Cypher Pulse stay here until somebody else? What about the Seraphims? Obviously, so let's talk about Sentomaru and the Seraphims real quick. Sentomaru showing up automatically within the comment section brought about the possibility of Kizaru possibly showing up too. I'm not so sure about that. If Kizaru shows up, we could get some insanity happening here on Egghead, which it's the beginning of the final saga, right? Anything can happen. If Kizaru were to show up, absolute insanity would follow, right? Especially considering who Sentomaru is going to be commanding. So in this chapter, it was said in specifically that Sentomaru would be commanding over the S-Snake, S-Hawk, and the S-Shark units, which we believe to be Hancock, Mihawk, and Jinbei. Now, Presno, a long time ago, when the Seraphim thing was first introduced, after Presno, talked about the Hancock Seraphim unit meeting Luffy, and how that could potentially, give us an idea as to how the personalities work within the Seraphim. If it's instantaneous, that Hancock immediately is like, oh, like that's Luffy, and falls in love with him right then and there, then we would know that they retain the same exact feelings as the original individual, right? But if it takes a little while, like let's just say Hancock sees Luffy, starts attacking him, and then Luffy protects someone else, and then while protecting someone else, Hancock falls in love with Luffy in the same way the original Hancock did, then that would also let us know that these characters are exactly like their human counterparts in regards to the way their personalities work. So another thing that we can get for that is Mihawk. If Mihawk finds interest in Zoro, as I would love for that to happen, man. If Mihawk just flies up to the skies, him and Zoro just start boxing, oh, dude, it would be so peak, right? And then Zoro and him would have that interaction with Mihawk, if he is like the young Mihawk. If Mihawk, because I strongly believe once we get to his backstory, we're going to see a Mihawk who was very ambitious, so wanted to reach the very top, right? And took the solo route of reaching the very top. If Mihawk is that type of individual, then he's going to want to fight the strongest people here, especially the strongest people that are within his same field of battle. So he's going to see Zoro with the blades, like, yo, let's box. And so if Mihawk goes immediately to Zoro, that would give us another indication that they are retaining the personalities of the original individuals. It says my battery's running low. That's not what we're talking about the peak, right? But it's just that's interesting to me, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that's going to be explored with these Seraphim units. Sentomaru, how is it going to be involved? Obviously, like it stated, the commands, right? We know Sentomaru, because if it was just Vegapunk commanding these things, they'd be like, okay, you know, they're just going to fight Cypher Pole and be done with it. But because it's Sentomaru specifically that's going to be commanding these units, then they're going to go, Sentomaru's going to go after the Straw Hats, right? So it's like, then what happens there, right? Now, obviously, like I said, the Hancock Luffy thing has to happen, or at least it should happen, which would be very interesting. Though to see how that goes. Jinbei, we've already seen him boxing the rest of the crew earlier on in the arc, but Mihawk, man, if it's not Zoro fighting Mihawk, and if it's not Luffy fighting Mihawk, that's a menace, bro. He had Blackbeard shook. Like, that's Kid Hawk, man. You know, the Kid Hawk spam. Shout out to that chapter. Legendary chapter, bro. I just finished rereading it the other day when I finished my reread of all the chapters that came out this year. Such a good chapter, man. But it's like, what happens there in regards to the Seraphim units? So I'm super excited to see what happens with the S units incoming within the next few chapters. I think that's going to be very key into the way that the rest of this arc goes, and the length of the arc as well. And what happens with Vegapunk? Like, if Vegapunk gets taken out, if Vegapunk dies, or if Vegapunk leaves with the Straw Hats, what happens to the Seraphim units? Do they go under the direct command of Sentomaru and the WG after that, and no longer just Vegapunk? Like, that's interesting. That's very fascinating, considering that we already saw them go in. Like, does he have a button that stops them from going? You know how that's normally a thing within the movies, right? With the robots, like, you have this one big button that controls them all. You hit them, it's like, oh, they all shut down. It's like, is there a button like that? I wonder. But exciting stuff, of course. Kuma popping away, like I said before. Kuma's either going to come to Egghead, to Vivi, to Sabo, to, I don't know, man. To Sorbet Kingdom. I don't know where Kuma's going. For me personally, I don't even think we have to go anywhere else. The Vivi stuff will happen when it happens, the Sabo stuff as well. I think right now the best thing for us would be if Kuma were to attempt to get to Egghead and he does not make it on time. Right? And maybe something potentially happens to Bonnie, and Kuma's like dealing with that, right? Already, and because I'm going to assume even before Kuma gets there, we're going to get or Kuma could just go directly to Vegapunk, right? Just pops up on the ship. And like we're somewhere in Elbaf doing something, and then Kuma pops up 3 days later, popping in front of Bonnie or whatever, right? But what I'm curious about is, since I'm going to assume Egghead Island is going to contain the Kuma, Bonnie, Dragon, and Vegapunk flashback, what are we going to learn within that flashback that is going to be integral to that? Right, like I'm very excited about it, because obviously that flashback is going to have a lot. It's going to have more to do with the origin of Revolutionary Army, more in Kuma and being known as this tyrant, this individual that I'm sure was falsely claimed as that. Right, it's just the rest of the world sees it as their perspective, but I believe Bonnie's words. But it would also be interesting to me if Kuma actually was a tyrant, but to his daughter he was not. That to me is always a really fascinating storyline as well. So the way we explore that is going to be a lot of fun, and I'm super excited. Either way, it's going to be super goated whenever we get to get Kuma's backstory of all characters. And I've always believed that Kuma will end up being one of the most tragic characters in the series, regardless of whether he lives or dies or maintains his memories, whatever it is. He's still going to be a very tragic character to the very end. So I'm looking forward to getting that flashback. But before we end this video, and I know we didn't do the normal comment thing, but I just had so much to say coming off of 1067 and 1068, which I also apologize for not having the 1067 Afterthoughts done before this, but hey, it works out better for us in the end here for Egghead Island, man. I'm loving this arc. But the one final thing I want to talk about is with the Iron Giant, and now in this chapter, finding about the Ancient Fuel. So obviously the Ancient Fuel is going to be, if Vegapunk ends up joining us, is going to be a very prevalent thing. We're going to see eventually. Someone in the comment section brought up the Ancient Fuel potentially being what like fires up the Pluton and or Uranus and stuff of that nature, right? Which would imply if Uranus is what Instant Messenger Sama used to rain down upon the Lucia, then that would mean that he has some sort of supply of this ancient fuel. Instant Messenger Sama does. So if that's the case, how do we get this ancient fuel? Where would we find this ancient fuel? What is it made of? And if the time arises, because that was brought up for a reason, right? If it eventually does end up happening, will it be Vegapunk or Frankie that ends up firing some ancient fuel into something? Obviously, the Iron Giant is going to come into play at some point in time, whether it be within this arc or later on, where the command might strike again and the Iron Giant starts moving once more. We don't know, right? We don't know what that command is. But let's just say that the Iron Giant from 200 years ago was lit up by this source, right? The source of power that Vegapunk is looking for. This so with the ancient fuel, let me actually go back and reread that part of the chapter, because the ancient fuel does have something to do with the source, if I'm not mistaken. That it's not like they're exactly the same thing, but I do believe they're connected. So let me go back to that right here. Led me to investigate the ancient fuel that powered that mechanical soldier. So my curious nature as a scientist compelled me to take a peek. Imagine how much we learn if that forbidden thread of history was unraveled. After a dear friend of mine died, I found myself ever deeper into the abyss to further his will, and of course it explodes, so we don't get to hear the end of this conversation. But so the ancient fuel that powered this mechanical source is the Allspark, right? That is a safe assumption, or at the very least they're connected. But I do believe that after reading it again, that sounds like they're the same thing. So if that is the case, what led specifically 200 years ago for this ancient fuel to fire up again? And it got me thinking. There has been this possibility on, people want to create their own sun, the Gear 5, the Sun God Nika stuff, the Undying Flame, all of that. We don't know who the previous users of the Gomu Gomu no Mi are, and according to the what was stated by Zunisha. Now, Zunisha himself hasn't heard it, right? Where he states, "Oh, I haven't heard this 800 years," but that doesn't necessarily mean that no one has awakened its sense. It's just how long it's been since Zunisha has heard it. But what I'm trying to get to with that is, I don't think it was Nika or the awakening that led this to if it did happen, then that'd be insane. But I don't think it was that. So if it wasn't that, then what is it? Was it the Lunarians? Was it what was it that caused the ancient fuel within it to either spark or placed some more ancient fuel within this thing? Because it's got to be one of the two, right? Either some more of the ancient fuel was put in and it was allowed to move in order to finish off or attempt to carry out this command, or the ancient fuel within it was sparked. It was awakened. So it's like, well, what is it? If it was awakened from a command from over 700 years before that point, then what in the world was it? So I don't know, man. I'm very curious on that Iron Giant thing. But that was the most fascinating part about chapter 1067, besides the possibility of Dragon showing up. Because it's like, Oda put that in for a reason, right? That was around the time with the fishmen starting their movement, so that's obviously a very important key part in history. They show up at the Marijoa, and the giant runs out of fuel before it's able to reach what I'm going to assume might have been the giant Straw Hat, Instant Messenger Sama, whatever it is that was drawing him up there, Uranus, whatever it is, right? Whatever the ancient fuel was, it ran out. He ran out of that energy before getting much farther. So like that implies multiple different things. And to me, that is such an exciting point that I hope when that flashback happens of what actually took place with the Iron Giant, that might actually lead us to getting like a big reveal within that flashback in regards to either the Void Sentry, the Gorosei, Instant Messenger Sama, the Giant Straw Hat, the individuals living up there in the Marijoa, something up there in the Marijoa that potentially could like suck its energy away. Whatever it is, the fact that it ran out of energy is going to play a big major key role down the line. And that excites me, because what that lets me know is with Oda putting a little thing there, those little flashback sequences, that we're going to revisit that at some point. Now, we don't have many chapters left. If this arc is going to be as short as we all think it is, we all believe we're going to get the origin of Devil Fruits, which means the way we all see it, right? The way I see it, So Luffy has to go Gear 5 in order for him to have the desire to talk about the origin of fruits, talk about the Nika Nika no Mi, and for us to find out more about these fruits awakenings and stuff of that nature, right? Like, he's going to give us the origin, right? He has to know, considering how he's managed to duplicate many of these. I mean, he managed to duplicate Kuma's ability, right, as we saw in this week's chapter. So, with that being said, we have to get that. How long is that going to take? And then on top of that, this Iron Giant backstory that's looming, is that going to be saved for end of series time, right? Where we could have that Void Century flashback that leads us, not necessarily just from 800 years ago, but leads the timeline up until the current day. At this point in time, we can't rule out any possibilities to where the Void Century flashback could legitimately be from 1,000 years ago, maybe even from the beginning of time for One Piece. Like, from the moment the One Piece verse came to be up until where we are today, when it connects all those events together. We have a mammoth of a task, but if there's anybody who can pull it off, it's Oda, right? Give us like a Xenogears type of thing in that way, which would be super, super cool. But what I want to know is how much of this we're going to tackle with an egghead and how much of this we're going to tackle later on. Considering this thing is a legendary Iron Giant, this could be left for Elbaf, right? Where we find out more about the ancient fuel, what the Iron Giant's mission was, and stuff of that nature in Elbaf, right? That's also a possibility as well, considering it looks like this is all set up for the Elbaf arc. But I just want to know how much we're going to find out here in Egghead, because it's been such a fun arc, such a great arc so far with so many reveals and insanity taking place that it's like, yo, what else does Oda have in store in this craziness? So that is the Afterthoughts. It's so much to talk about, so many things to explore, but those are the main topics of discussion that I had this week, and like I said, because of the 1067, 1068 stuff, and I just finished rereading every single chapter that came out this year leading up to 1068, so very exciting stuff. Excuse me, I absolutely adore Egghead Island, and this most recent chapter just let me know the momentum's gonna continue, right? Like, this momentum's gonna keep getting even crazier and crazier and crazier, which lets me know it's like, okay, Oda obviously like cut Vegapunk off before saying any more, but when is that going to be like? Because if Vegapunk leaves with us, we're gonna have that downtime to discuss it again. So it's like, what is gonna happen that is going to stop Vegapunk from giving us all this? Because obviously certain things we're gonna have to find out on our own, and not just have it given to us through Vegapunk. So it's like, what happens, man? What takes place? When are we gonna find out about the legendary Iron Giant and the origin of fruits? Because that might be right around the door. And what is going to be our next potential? I mean, we've already gotten so many hints toward the Void Century here that I feel like even if this is it for the rest of this arc, I'd be fine with it. I mean, we got to find out literally more. We've learned more about the Void Century in the last like 5 chapters than we have in the entire series. It is that incredible. The reveals that have been given to us, like the implications that we're getting here, right? But it's like, yo, what's next here now with Egghead Island? But absolutely loving it. Looking forward to this Luffy versus Lucci rematch next week. What's going to happen when the Seraphim get involved, right? Is it going to be like we talked about? We're going to have those certain matchups. We start seeing how their personalities mix. Are we going to see the S-Croc and S-Crocodile and the S-Flamingo, right? As we talked about in the discussion. Are we going to see the S-Law, right? Essentially like the S-Doctor with Trafalgar D. Water Law, the S-Blackbeard. You know, if it's going to be all the Shichibukai who've ever been there, man, the S-Moria or the S-Shadow, right, for Gecko Moria. It's like, how many of them are we going to see here, or are we going to learn of their existence? Even if they're not here themselves, are we going to learn of their existence in some capacity, right? Like, just so many things that we can learn and explore still. But I'm loving this arc so much. Vegapunk's such a fascinating character, and I'm very excited to see what happens here with Bonnie and Kuma, and where's Kuma going to end up. There's just so many different plot points, and the momentum is just firing on all cylinders. We just love to see it, man. Another quick point as well. Loving the character dynamics. So the dynamics between Vegapunk, Luffy, Chopper, and Jinbei, just so much fun, man. And when Bonnie was awake, Bonnie too. And then just little small things like Sanji going to protect Robin when they find out Lucci's pulling up. It's stuff like that makes the series so special. So let me know what y'all thought about these chapters in the comments down below. And if you have anything else to add, please let me know in the comments down below. I look forward to seeing all of that, man. But until next time, y'all have an awesome day. Looking forward to watching this anime episode that's about to drop here within the next few hours for the Robin versus Black Maria greatness. So you already know that's going to be a banger. Very much looking forward to it. But I will see y'all next time. Have an awesome day. Goat, peace, egghead, Futurama, Einstein, greatness, dude. We're loving it, man.